Hi guys! So welcome to today's last day of our mini bootcamp. And so I'm super excited today because we're going to talk about floor plan, and I hope you have a lot of questions because I love questions and comments as well. So I'm just going to give you couple minutes for more people to trickle in to the live stream, and then we're going to get started. If you're already on the call, let me know where you are watching the live stream from and say hello, basically. All right. Okay. So I hope everyone's having a great Friday so far. Hi, Jen. How are you? So we're just going to give it a couple more minutes and then we're going to start the live stream. Let's see. How's everyone doing today? Everyone's good? Hi! It's just so nice to see familiar faces on these live streams, so thank you for coming and showing up every day. Hi, DC Homestaging. Hello. All right. Okay, wow, we got more and more people coming in. Okay, so your time is valuable, so I want to go ahead and get started. So today we're going to talk about floor plan and then what to do when you have tricky floor plans. So basically, when you are working with floor plan, the first thing you want to do is figure out what is the purpose of this room. And that's super important because once you figure out what exactly is the purpose of that room, then you can approach accordingly. So most of the time, it's not going to be a problem. You know, a living room is a living room, and you know, a dining room is a dining room, a bathroom is a bathroom, right? But there might be some trickier areas, like because we used to stage in San Francisco Bay Area, there's a lot of more historical homes, like Victorian and Edwardian homes. And a lot of them, even though it was gutted inside to modernize the interior, but the bones still remain. So a lot of times we may have things like a butler's pantry that is no longer really in use in modern day times. Because back in the day in Victorian homes, on the bigger homes, the wealthier homes, they usually have servants. So they will have a butler's entry right next to the dining room to prepare the dishes before they go out into the dining room for the homeowners. So in those situations, a lot of times people may not know what to do with it. So it is up to you for your imagination what to transform those space to really teach buyers how they can utilize those space. And most of the time we'll stage those areas as pantry. We may put decorative dishes in the shelves because a lot of times they have open shelving. Because back in the day, it was much easier to access instead of having the cupboards. So stuff like that. We turn that into a mini, because a lot of times people have a computer in the kitchen to do like their office work or like home administration kind of thing. So we turn that into a computer niche as well. So there are many different ways for you to do. So a lot of times, especially if you're working in historical homes, those are just kind of research you need to do. And most of the time, the real estate agents would know if they're very experienced in that neighborhood already. Chances are they've seen that kind of floor plan already, and they can give you a bit of a clues. So having the conversation with your real estate agent and with the home seller is very important, because sometimes, especially if you're working with a home that has a lot of history, it's nice, and it's actually also good to know those history, because maybe some of the things you can do in staging is incorporate some of those history into the home. So the real estate agent can actually talk it up as well when they're doing their open houses. With newer homes, or actually with newer agents, sometimes they don't know at all. Like we staged a house once where they had a butler's entry, and the real estate agent, this was his first listing. He's very new in the industry and he had no idea what that was. So he asked me what exactly it was. So this is why also it's really important for you to do a bit of research when you go into a neighborhood that you may not be familiar with. So coming back to floor plan. So usually when we look at floor plan, I draw a little mini graph today. So you will have a room with the 4 walls, right? It's very straightforward. So, but how do you know where to put the focal point? Usually it has to do with what are some of the clues in architectural details that can tell you. So this is a floor plan from a house that we staged in San Francisco. It's actually a loft. In that particular neighborhood, there was a lot of loft built because it used to be a very industrial area. So there was a lot of conversions, a lot of condos were converted from old warehouses. So in this particular case, there's a loft. It's a long rectangle room, kind of like a bowling alley. And one of the things we walk in from the entryway, we see the kitchen cabinets right here and the cooktop. And then also there's a bar for the kitchen counter. So in a way, you can use that as a dining space. So it's very simple to stage here. So we obviously put in our normal kitchen accessories. And then also we put in some bar stools. And usually with countertop, I'd like to do a breakfast bar setup. So that's what we did right here. And here, in my very rudimentary drawing, there's and also this is not to scale, guys. Like the actual staircase is probably a bit smaller. So there is a circular staircase to go upstairs to the bedroom area in the upstairs loft. And then from here, it's all basically empty space, empty space, empty space. So this is like the raw floor plan when the homeowner moved out. And then here we have a fireplace. So this would be our architectural focal point in our living room. And then here we have window, 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 floor to ceiling, very large windows. This particular condo was very nice because it had floor to ceiling windows, so it added a lot of sunlight into the space. So that was great. That's basically it's like the dream scenario is to have a lot of natural light in the space, because a lot of times, actually there's studies shown in visual merchandising, like actually Walmart did this study for their store, where they had artificial light in half of the store and then natural light in the other half of the store. And then they tested to see what are the purchase rates or sales volume, if there's a difference at all. And then the study actually shown the area that had natural light had the most sales. And then second was the artificial light. And in corners of the store where there was no light at all, it had the least amount of sales. And casinos in Vegas have done similar studies. And this is why if you look at modern casino designs, there's actually a lot of natural light incorporated into the gambling space. Because they found out that when we have natural light, the more natural light there is, people tend to stay longer in the space. And this is why in the 70s, when we look at casinos, people thought, okay, in order to make people gamble and spend more money, we need to put them in windowless rooms and just let people smoke and do all those things. And now if you look at modern day casino design, it's completely opposite. It's because they did studies like this. And this is why it's also, I think it's interesting to read up on other industry as well, like visual merchandising. In a way, it's very similar because they are selling a product through the use of color and design, all the design theory and principle and composition that we talk about. Visual merchandisers use that as well. And so I think it's sometimes very interesting. So anyway, coming back to the floor plan. So lots of natural light, very tall ceiling. So one of the challenges is that the space is going to feel very empty because it has such tall ceiling and such a big wide space where it's all empty space right here. So your challenge when it comes to focal point, first of all, what to do, right? This is the whole area for the common room, for the common living space. So one of the most popular strategy for you to do is to create zones. So you can create zones by using colors, by using rugs, and then also you can create zones by your furniture arrangement. So these are the 3 different ways for you to build that focal point, especially you have an open floor plan. I think open floor plan is in a way a bit trickier than when you have an individual room, because when you have a self-contained living room, a self-contained dining room, for example, it is very clear in terms of the traffic flow. Like people understand exactly, okay, this is the living room because the fireplace is in here, and here will be the dining room because we see a big chandelier or like a very strong light fixture. That's usually hung a bit lower for dining room. So those are kind of different visual cues that we get when we have, if the house is sold vacant. But when you have an open area, it's really hard for buyers to visualize how they can utilize the space. So again, we have the entryway to see the kitchen and we have the round staircase. And so what I did is I put the dining room right off the kitchen. That also it makes sense, right? Because once you cooked, immediately the dish comes to the kitchen. So a lot of times when you're creating a traffic flow, it just needs to follow your common sense of how we live in the space, right? So I had a fairly large rug here to anchor the space. I also have, again, this is not to scale, guys. I have another big rug that really anchored the space in the living room. So immediately I have two different zones with with a cohesive color scheme, but different accent colors. So the couch here, I use a really nice yellow here. And I use a very low couch because I want people to be able to come in and see through the windows here, because that's a really great selling point for this particular condo, for this unit. It also has a really nice courtyard view, so this is why I wanted people to be able to see past the, if I put in a really tall sofa, especially with a sectional, this is the chaise lounge part, so it's very flat. So I wanted people to be able to have that view pass. And then so we have the dining room set up here, and then I have the living room set up here. And I still have an empty space here, so I set that up as a work corner. Because in this particular neighborhood in Soma, there's a lot of young professionals. So it could be, the seller actually, they are a young professional. Both of them are young professionals, they don't have kids. So this loft was like the perfect setup for them because you have the common area downstairs. And because the staircase is a spiral staircase, it's really difficult if you have the child, because then you have to bring the child up and down every day. It's very inconvenient. And then the upstairs loft is only have a 1 bedroom and 1 bath. So it's really perfect for a young person, a young professional who's single, or a couple with no children. And so we had a very similar floor plan here. And then, and basically so it's really important to have a work corner, because a lot of people in this neighborhood, a lot of buyers coming in, they want to be able to work at home. So again, it's really important to do the homework on your neighborhood to figure out what exactly is the trend, what are the buyers looking for. So this is how you can create a floor plan that makes sense. So basically, the primary thing is the first thing you walk into an open space plan, especially, is you want to focusing on creating zone. And then each zone needs to talk to each other as well. Otherwise, especially in an open floor plan, it's going to feel really disconnected if one zone doesn't connect to the next. And this is why you need to have a color story for the entire space, because that's the common thread that's going to tie them together. Same thing with using texture. If you're using similar texture in textiles, and then artwork style and architecture style, it's going to really help to pull the different zones together into one space. And then within each zone, you need to have a focal point, right? So in the dining area, usually it's a dining table. And in the living room area, the focal point is usually the fireplace. So this is also why the furniture placement is facing the fireplace, but it's still kept it open because the sofa is fairly low. It's very simple. It works for that really architecture style in that neighborhood. And just a simple coffee table here. I actually also had a side table on the side as well. And then in front of the windows, I also had a plant. I always like to have a fairly medium-sized plant in the corner to anchor the space. I am a huge fan of putting plants into space because I think it really adds a lot of ambiance, and that's something that I was influenced by working for Anthropologie as well. Like, no matter how small the budget is for visual merchandising, corporate will always ask for plants. Whether it is we make fake plants, or there's always a budget requirement in a very already small budget to buy plants that are alive, because it helps to inject the freshness and also like the liveliness of having something that's living into the space. And so in this particular, for a staging though, that's really a luxury, because like our client really usually doesn't pay us enough to come back to the home every week to take care of plants. Although in higher end luxury homes, that's something that you should consider, having live plants and have that built up in your proposal as well, because it really makes the space feel very different. When I staged multiple $1 million homes, I would always go to flower market and buy orchids and buy live plants like palms, for example, to put in the home, because it really helps to make the space come alive. So yeah, so once you establish the focal point for each zone, you also need to use colors as well. So color, again, having the color story is really important to help to build the overall look and feel for the space, especially using a color palette that's really pleasing to your potential home buyers. And lastly, you can also leverage your rugs. So in a big open place like this, especially this is a loft, like people can go upstairs in the bedroom area and actually physically look down into the common area. So having that rug, having these two rugs, it really helps a lot to immediately define the different zone in this huge open floor plan. And so the other tricky things that you always usually see is having a fireplace in the corner. So the floor plan usually would look something like, I'm just going to draw it really quick on my pad. So it usually would look like something like this, where there's a corner of the space that's missing. So a lot of times I will actually recommend you to treat this as a full corner. But you know the focal point is going to be here in the fireplace. So a lot of times what I would do is I would still place, so in situation like this, the number one thing you want to do is figure out where your focal point is going to be and then place your furniture accordingly. So usually I would still place, again, not to scale, sorry guys. I will still place the long sofa across from the fireplace, and then maybe an accent chair here if there's enough space and room, and another chair here, and then have the coffee table right here. Because that is still a floor plan that really focusing on the focal point. The other thing you can do is you can add, if you have space, you can add a console table here as if it's a secondary focal point, and maybe there's an artwork right here, and then a little bit of decorative accessories on the console table. Cool. All right. So that's pretty much all about floor plan today. I know it's a very quick lesson today. So do you guys have any questions on what I went through today and also in the previous 4 days? Let me just see. So Trish, I saw you gave a request to be in my live video. Let me see what that's about. So I'm going to add you in.